when I made the decision to run for governor, I gotta be, let's be frank, I wasn't the guy that everybody was gathering around in the early throes of the campaign. And Mike, he had my back, and he did a very fantastic job of convincing him I was the right guy for the job at the right time. And as a result, because of that momentum we created over the Lincoln Day circuits, so all the candidates out here and all the incumbents on the Lincoln Day circuits, it was very difficult for us to go through all those different events throughout the state, which is beneficial to the Republican Party. And as you can see by the momentum created by the Lincoln Day circuit, we as a party were successful because of Mike's intervention, because all the party chairs or the county chairs and their intervention in support of the party. We've seen a significant level of apathy when it comes to politics because we're in the midterm. There's no president on the ballot, and we get into the midterms, and I quite often have to talk about that through the campaign trail. How do we motivate people to get up off the couch and make sure that they vote? Because their vote makes a difference, and it's because of events like this. And I can't think Jill, the Lincoln Day party, the Clark County party has never looked this robust since she took it up. So this is the prevention of the apathy as we go into the midterms and the success of the Republican Party going forward. And it would be remiss if I didn't mention my two partners in state government, and that'd be the Lieutenant Governor, Carlos Anthony. And there's another individual named Anthony Matthews, and for those of you who don't know, he's the comptroller. And for those of you who don't know, that they're actually the CPA for state government. So I'll help you out here, Andy, because nobody knows what the hell you do. So, it's important for the comptroller is a very important piece in state government. They have the checkbook that writes the checks. It balances the budget and it makes sure that we are operating within the black instead of the red. So it's a good thing that Andy's there. He's very competent. He does a fantastic job. And to revert back to Carlos Anthony, what a great partner. Can you guys think of a better to take on? As we go through this process, we go through the election cycle, this is the first time Carlos Anthony's got an opponent. I'm jealous, because but he's out there pounding the pavement. You see him on social media on a daily basis, and he's doing exactly what the Lieutenant Governor should be doing. He's my partner whenever I'm indisposed and have to do something outside of my primary responsibilities. I can depend on him like a brother. And we, as a state, are doing fantastic as a result of his efforts. Within the state government, and also within his inability to get into the legislative Senate floor because he doesn't know how to open the doors. So he's, what are you bothering about?
I have to clarify that.
Oh, when you speak, you're going to clarify that? Okay. All right, let's talk about the Republican Party, what we stand for. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because sometimes we lose our way. We lose our way and we forget what exactly we stand for. We stand for limited government, correct? Low taxation, correct? We stand for free markets with minimum intervention by the government process. We stand for individual liberty, right? Within the restraints of the law. Because when we first come to within the restraints of the law, okay, and then public safety. You say, well, that's not normally what we talk about. Hell yeah, that's what we talk about. It's public safety and the malaise that is brought forward by the Democratic Party in the last, let's give it a decade, and the situations we've been put in across the nation, and in some aspects in Nevada, because of the lack of attention to public safety. And you know me, because I used to be a sheriff and a police officer for several decades. We are only successful as our public safety in our economic drivers and ability to have a quality of life within the state. And our law enforcement does a fantastic job within the state of Nevada. So. Let's talk about what the hell's going on in the state, all right, in our current situation. So we get elected back in 23, we go into our initial legislative session, and what I stood for in that session, what I campaigned on, it was a platform based on a diversifying the economy, education, improvement in education, improvement in our health services, and improvement in public safety. And as you know, we have a majority Democratic Party in the legislature. But we did, because of our efforts, we prevented from having a supermajority in both houses. And why is that important? Because they would have nullified my veto power, right? And because of all your effort across the board, not just at the top of the ballot, but down the ballot, we were able to prevent that going forward. And I'm going to ask your help. Please apply for that. You know, when I'm out meeting constituents on a daily basis, they're not all, they congratulate, the job well done of the legislature. But more importantly, they congratulate me for my vetoes. And I say, veto is bad government. But either way, it's a stopgap for bad government. And we have to ensure that we maintain that ability for me as the governor to continue to push back on bad legislation. So we went through the legislative process, and then we get into the second legislative process, and we were successful to the tune of 75% of what the Republican Party was opining about and pushing forward in that process. And I would equate that to great success because we were pushing against a majority Democratic legislature. But people were listening, we were communicating, we were providing leadership. We say this is the era of that mindset. We have to ensure that Nevada moves forward versus backwards, as it did in the previous administration. And so, with all that effort, we have been successful in moving the state forward. We brought in over $6 billion in new economic development within the state. There you go. We diversified the economy, so we're not solely relying on the gaming aspects of the economy for decades and decades and decades. That's what the pattern was built on. Yeah. Some of you may not have seen, that we're down 11% in gaming revenue for the month of January. Here, we've never experienced those kind of numbers in the past. That's why it's even more important for us to diversify the economy so that we have resiliency in the economy and we can all prosper moving forward. Education, we made significant choice in the school choice aspect. We made significant progress in education. We all know in this room, education has been the bane of our existence within the state of Nevada. We can't even supply the workforce that's necessary to occupy the jobs within the state. So you probably often see that the unemployment rate is right now the percentage is 5.2% in the state of Nevada. So that makes us 45th in the national rankings in unemployment. And why is that? Why is that? Because we are number one in job availability. You know why? Because we have the wrong jobs. And that's why it's important for us to continue to keep our eye on the ball and diversify the economy. Education, let's go back to education. Education is our workforce. We were known to not have college-ready kids or career-ready kids for several decades. And so with the help of all the legislators in here that support our platform, we were able to increase on the school choice environment with open zoning, charter schools, and the ability to change the curriculum and hold the teachers and administrators accountable for poor performance and change the curriculum in K through 3, which is 3 by 3, which changes the whole dynamic and the foundation of education in that space. And even after that, it's probably the most important thing we can do as a government body for the success of our state moving forward. Healthcare. What was the most common thing that was said in the state of Nevada when you needed quality health care? Go to the airport, right? Go to the airport. That's the only way you can get quality health care. So with us having our eyes on the ball and addressing that particular issue, we were able to obtain $180 million out of the Trump administration to put into our rural environment to improve upon health care there. You can plot that if you could, but here. And we've also increased funding in the state into the graduate medical education, so our doctors who graduate here can stay here and do their residencies and improve upon that. Once again, I'll mention public safety because it's going to be a topic in front of mind for me across the next 2 legislative sessions when I get reelected. Okay? And unfortunately, for decades and even more, in the previous administration, there was a general attitude of we don't support the police officers. Let's worry about the rights of the criminal element versus the victims. And I made it an important point of my platform to ensure that I keep my eye on the ball and we pass significant legislation that addresses that attitude towards criminal activities. And we were successful as a result of the special session in that country. Not last, but the most significant piece of change of platform going into my re-elect is the inclusion of the public, attainable affordable housing. We have created an environment in the state of Nevada because of the federal government and the encumbrance of BLM and our land availability. We have the highest median home prices in the nation. Actually, we're probably second to the highest in the nation. I think Hawaii and California is actually higher in that aspect. And we had to do something about that as state government. The state government has never really been in the housing business, but in order for us to prosper and expand upon the economy, we had to get engaged. So I directed the legislature to allocate $180 million into incentives to promote construction, licensing, and repeal of cumbersome regulations in order to expand upon that aspect. That may sound mundane to you, but it's probably one of the most important things outside of education for our success as a state. And we're doing things about it. All right, let's talk about how the hell we're going to be successful, right? Yeah. You guys paying attention? All right. I can't see out there because of the light, so please let me know if I'm losing the crowd. So, there's a couple things happening in this election. So there's been a proliferation of the independent voters. So let's quantify it in percentages. Right now, as registered voters, we're 28% Republican, 28% Democrat, and we're 44% independent voters. Why is that? Because people are pissed, right? People are pissed on the left side and the right side. And we, as a party, need to realize that and make sure that we are reaching out to all those, so all you candidates in here and want to seek the re-election and new candidates, make sure you're not marginalized that particular demographic, because if you are, you're not going to be successful and you're not going to get elected. Because I guarantee you, the other side of the aisle is not doing that. And it's very important that we embrace those folks, tell them the benefits of the Republican Party, and that we are going to help them through this process in order to be successful. Voter ID, Dave here, where you at? Right there, so we qualified. In the state of Nevada, you have to have 2 successive votes on a ballot initiative in order to enshrine it in the Constitution. And one of the things I wanted to accomplish is some voter integrity through the legislative process, because they had the majority Democratic Party. They didn't want to hear any of those bills backwards voting. So I promised I would take it to the ballot, we qualified it, we raised the money, and with Dave being the architect of it, along with George Harris. George Harris was also instrumental in that. And we were able to qualify it, we received the signatures to qualify it, and then we took it to the vote of the people, and it passed at, I believe, 73%. Is that correct? 73? So that is the highest percentage ever received on a ballot initiative in the state of Nevada. And why is that? Because even the Democrats are pissed off about it. No matter what you see in the media, and what the talking heads say, they want something done about voter ID, but they would never say that in private. They would never say that to the powers to be within the Democratic Party, but it's the right thing to do to ensure that we have integrity associated with our voting process. So here's the ask. Get off your butt and go vote for that again one more time. All right? Here's another initiative to get people motivated to go out to vote. And I know probably about 100%, I'll give it 95% of everybody in this room is pissed off about men and women's sports. Right? And so I took it upon myself to go ahead and raise the money for that initiative. We're going to qualify it through the courts. Imagine this, the Democratic Party is litigating it. And we're trying to get rid of our effort to put it on the ballot. We're going to win that lawsuit. I anticipate that. And then we're going to raise the money to qualify it. And then we have a vote in November to say yes, but we need to prohibit men and women's sports. So as you travel and you're helping through the election process, you're going to hear people saying the NIAA, which is the governing body on K-12 athletics. They said that's already codified in their statutes. Yeah, but that's not law. We have to make sure we put it in law because if the board changes, we can change their attitude towards that at any point in time. And that's how we're going to be successful. Listen up. The most important thing I can leave you with today is, well, a couple of things, is get out the vote. All right? In order for us to be successful in the state of Nevada, especially in the midterm, if you go through history, if the president is not on the ballot, we probably average around 60 to 65% of our total registered voters actually voted. So a small subset can make the difference. As little as 10 votes can make a difference. And it's important for you to be our force multiplier, especially here in Clark County. Okay? The blue wall, they tried to put up the blue wall in Clark County. We were able to get over the blue wall in the last election process. We're planning on, Jill Douglass is planning on us getting over that blue wall again in this election process. So, I was going to give you some good news on voter registration statewide, but I don't want to because then you're going to say, well, I don't need to vote, we're going to win. Okay, we're not going to win without everybody's effort. So you got to tell your family, friends, your coworkers, people you know, you're going to constantly badger them and say, have you voted yet? If they say no, hold their hand, get them out there to vote. Because it's going to make a difference and it's going to be small margins in order for us to be successful. And I believe our previous ballot, the ballot coming in forward into the next cycle is a good sound ballot. And we're going to be successful as a party. The other thing I need to convey to you is it's not just about me, Andy, and Starbucks. It's about the entire legislative slate. In order for us to be successful. Because as you know, they're a third branch of the government, and if we get a supermajority situation at the state legislature, we're all going to fail as a party. I might as well go work on my golf handicap if that occurs. And I don't want to do that because I suck. So, right? I don't want to worry about golf. I'm worried about good government and moving this state forward. So, I can't thank you enough. And here's my last piece. I promise you it's my last piece. I want to give you an indigestion. It's malpractice if a candidate stands up here and has a captured audience and doesn't ask for your vote. I'm Joe Lombardo. I'm running for governor, and I appreciate your vote.